Hello friends, and welcome to my channel CloudOps DevOps. In today's video, we will go through Terraform session 2, and in today's video I will demonstrate how to write down the Provider.tf file of the root module. Provider.tf file is a very important file for the root module where we configure three things. One is the Terraform resource provider, which in this case is Azure. Then we have the backend configuration where the Terraform state file will be stored, and then we have the configuration for the Terraform service principal, which will be used to authenticate Terraform to Azure for provisioning of resources. So in this video we will learn how to install Terraform extension in Visual Studio Code, create Azure storage account and container for storing Terraform state file, create Terraform root module, create Main.tf, Provider.tf and Variable.tf file. And in this video we are only going to learn step-by-step scripting of the Provider.tf file. So we will take up each of these files, Main.tf, Provider.tf and Variable.tf, step by step in each of the videos, so that you can clearly understand that what we need to exactly code in each of these files. So let's start with the first step: install Terraform extension in Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code, you can easily get it from Google. You just need to search Visual Studio Code, and you will easily have you will get the option from where you can download the Visual Studio Code from the official website. So I have already downloaded it, so I'm not going to do that again. Now I have to first of all and then install Terraform extension in the Visual Studio Code. So this is my Visual Studio. So let me open it once again. So I click on new window. Sorry, it's taking a little time. Okay, it's already opened. So I click on Visual Studio. Okay, now from here we can go to extensions. From here we can go to extensions. So this is the extensions button. So from here we can search for Terraform. Now here all the Terraform extension providers will come up, but we will go with Microsoft. So I already have it installed, so that is why you can, and once you install it you will get this icon on the left hand side, HashiCorp Terraform. So I already have it installed, so I will not be installing. All you need to do is just click on this and just click on install, and it will start the installation. After it is installed, it will show an uninstall button. That means it has been installed. So I already have this Terraform extension, so I don't need to install it again. So with this we completed the first step. Our next step is create Azure storage account and container for storing Terraform state file. So I have already created a storage account in my last video. So in this video I will use that same storage account for creating a new container where I can store the state file. I'll just go back to, so this is my storage account. So first of all, this is the resource group Terraform infra. In this resource group I have created a storage account. It is always recommended to create the storage account for storing state file in a different resource group, and in that resource group we will not store any resources. It's best to keep that resource group totally segregated for storing state files. So here I already have a storage account. I'll just get inside it. Now in this particular storage account, I already have a container where state file is there. I will create a new container for storing state file for this demo. And you can understand that in one particular container there can be multiple state files, and also in one storage account there can be multiple containers, each storing an individual state file. So I just click on container. So here I already have a container which is actually storing a state file, and you can see the public access level is private. So I create another container plus. So here I give another name, state container 2. The public access level is private, no anonymous access, nothing to do with the advanced part. You will just click on create. Now please understand that the creation of container, the creation of storage account for storing state file of Terraform is a manual process. So although Terraform is used to automatically provision resources, the first initial stages are manual. So we are done with creation of container. So with this we complete the second step as well. Now next is creation of Terraform root module. So as I explained in my previous video, that a Terraform folder structure first of all consists of the root module, where we put the main.tf, provider.tf, variable.tf, and in the root module we have another module folder inside which we create the child modules. These child modules are for the different resource groups, the different resources. It can be a resource group, it can be a key vault, it can be a function hub, etc. So in this video we will just create the root module and the provider.tf file for the root module. So we go to our drive where we want to create our root module. So here we just create a folder and enter Terraform demo 2. That's it. So this becomes our root module. Now inside this root module we will have another module folder, inside which we will have further folders that will be treated as child modules. And in this root module we will have three files now: main.tf, provider.tf, and uh, variable.tf. So those files we will create using Visual Studio. So I already have Visual Studio open. Now I'll just go and click on open folder. I'll go to new folder. I'll go to my location where I just created it. So here is the folder Terraform demo 2. I'll just select the folder and it opens up. Yes, I trust the authors. So now I am inside my root module. So here I have the options to create file. So I will just click on new file and I will write down the first file name, which is the main.tf. So the main.tf file is created. I will click on another plus button. So for creating another file, this is variable.tf. The variable.tf is done, and now I will create the provider.tf file. You can create it in any order. It's not like that you need to follow the order that I am following. You can create it in any order. So we have created the Terraform root module, and we have created main.tf, provider.tf, and the variable.tf files. Our next step is to script the provider.tf file step by step. So let's go to the next slide. So what are the different parts of a provider.tf file? We have, first of all, we have to configure the Azure RM provider. Next we have to configure the Terraform service principal, and next you have to configure the backend. So what is this configure Azure RM provider? So as you know that Terraform has multiple cloud providers. It has Azure, it has AWS, it has Google, and it has many more. So in this particular demo we are going to provision Azure resources. We are planning to provision Azure resources. That is why we are using Azure RM provider, and we have to configure that Azure RM provider in our provider.tf file. That is why the name of the file is provider.tf. Next is Terraform service principal. So in my previous videos I have explained why a service principal is used for Terraform. Service principal is a type of identity created in the Azure Active Directory. What is the use of Terraform service principal? Terraform service principal is an identity which is used to authenticate Terraform with Azure. Since Terraform is an external tool, not a part of Microsoft, so Terraform has to authenticate itself. And since no manual intervention is involved in that authentication process, so a service principal is needed. Configure backend. So backend is the storage account and the container that we just created for storing our Terraform state file. So let us go to our Visual Studio, and this is the Provider.tf file. So the first thing that we have to do is step 1. So step 1 is configure Azure RM provider. So for this we'll write down Terraform. Next we have required provider. So as you can see that autocomplete is coming up. The reason is we have installed the Terraform extension. Without Terraform extension also you can write down Terraform files in Visual Studio Code, but that would be less inconvenient. So required providers block. Now as I said that in the required providers we are going to use Azure RM. So now, so Azure RM is a provider in our Terraform registry. Why we are using Azure RM? Because we want to provision Azure resources. Now, what is this? What do you have to write in this Azure RM block? Here we have to first of all write down the source. Source in the sense from where will this registry be downloaded. The source is HashiCorp / Azure RM. So what is this source HashiCorp Azure RM? If I go back to Google, and this is the Terraform registry, you can see it's written registry.terraform.io/providers/HashiCorp/Azure RM. So here in this Terraform registry we can see that we have a provider called Azure RM, and you can see the path is HashiCorp/Azure RM. So that is why we have to give the source HashiCorp/Azure RM. So Terraform will understand that okay, from HashiCorp/Azure RM I need to download this provider. Next is I need to specify a version. So the version I can give as greater than equals to 3.0.0. So we are done with the first part. So in the first part we have configured the Azure RM provider. Next we have to configure the Terraform service principal. So for this we have to write down provider, and here also again Azure RM, because we have created our service principal in Azure Active Directory. So again we are using the Azure RM provider only. So the first thing that we have to write down over here is features, and just keep it as it is. Okay. Next we have to write down the details of the service principal. So let's go to the service principal first. We'll go to home, we'll go to Azure Active Directory. So we will already have the service principal created beforehand. Okay. So here we go to app registrations. We go to owned applications, and here I see that my service principal is there. I need to open up this service principal. Now I have to write down the details in the service principal. So the first thing that I have to write is the client ID. So client ID I will not directly hard code it over here. I will rather use a variable. So I write down var.client ID. Now these variables will be declared in the Variable.tf file. After writing down the client ID, we have to write down the client secret. So this also will be stored in a variable. It is always best to store values in variables as much as possible, so that at later point of time when we think of modifying any resource or modifying the provider file, we just need to modify the Variable.tf file, and all the places where the variable is referred will be automatically uh, edited. And then we have tenant ID. So this also we will keep it in a variable. And then we have the subscription ID. So client id, client secret, and tenant id, what are these? So client id is the this thing, the client id of the service principal. Next we have the client secret. So when we go to client secret, we can see that there is a value. Now when we create a service principal, at that time the client secret is visible, so we have to copy it and keep it at one place. Once we save it, the client secret is no more visible. Okay, that is the security feature of Azure. Now next is tenant id. So from this page, from the service principal page itself, we will get the tenant id, which is this. So we just need to copy that. And then the subscription id. So remember, this subscription id is that subscription id where I want to provision resources. Okay, so if I want to provision resources, say for example, uh, in this particular in this particular Terraform RG resource group, so I need the subscription in which I want to provision the resources. So say I have provisioned this Terraform RG in my Visual Studio Professional subscription, and this is my subscription id. So I have to put that subscription id in this value. So with this we have configured Terraform service principal. Now our next step is to configure the backend where the Terraform state files will be stored. So for that, to configure backend for storing Terraform state file. So with this we write on backend. So backend is the block which will help us to configure Terraform state file. Now again we have to write down the provider. Now here we are using Azure storage account. So Azure RM, again provider, and then we put curly braces. So in this one, what we have to do, we have to put some details, the resource group details. Let us first of all put the subscription details, subscription ID. So this subscription ID is the subscription where the storage account is stored. So I go back to home, and this was my resource group where I have created the storage account for storing my state file. So this is the subscription ID. I copy it and I put it over here. Next, resource group name. So resource group name is the name of the resource group where our storage account is stored. So my storage account is stored in this particular resource group, Terraform infra. So Terraform hyphen infra. Next we have the storage account name. The storage account name is the storage account which is used to store the Terraform state file. In this case it is this. So I'll just stg acn. Next, the container name. So I go inside the storage account and I just created a container for storing the state file. I go to containers, and here I can see the name of the container is state container 2. So I put state container 2 over here. And the last part is to put something called as key. So key is the name of the Terraform state file that will be created. So I can give any name over here, Terraform state.tf state. So this key, that means this is the state file. So I do not need to create any file inside the container manually. It will be automatically created when I run the Terraform commands like Terraform init, Terraform plan. At that time this state file will automatically be created inside this container. Now our next step, so our provider file is completed. We have mentioned the provider, the cloud provider whose resources we will. Our provider file is almost completed. We have created the required providers. We have configured our Azure RM provider. We have configured the backend as well. Now it's time to put the values of this variable. So for this we go back to Variable.tf, and here we write down variable, then we have to put this particular variable name over here. We have to write down a type, so this is a string, and then we have to write down something called as default. So default is the value of this variable. So this was the client ID of the service principal. So we go back to our Active Directory, then we go back to app registrations, owned application, we click on our service principal. So client ID is this, we just click on copy, it's copied. We'll go back, we'll put the value over here, and we can also give a description over here which will help any other developer to understand that okay, this particular variable is for this purpose. So this is the client ID of Terraform SPN. So this is the first variable that has been created. Now we have to create the next variable, which is client secret. Again, it's a string. Now default value. Now as I said, the client secret is created, is visible only once when you create it. After that, once it is saved, it is gone. So I will not put the client secret value over here since it's a security concern. So I will just keep it as of now. I'll keep it blank. But in real life, we have to actually put this value over here, and then I can again give description. Next we have the tenant ID. So again we create another variable. So here again we write down a string. It's a type is string, and then the default value. So the default value for this, we can go back to our service principal, and here we can see the tenant ID is given, and again description we can give. This is the tenant ID. Next, do we have any other variables? Yes, we have one last variable, that is a subscription ID. Subscription ID, and the type is string. And what is the default value? So here the subscription ID will be the subscription of that subscription where we want to provision our resource group. So it was this particular value, so we just pick it up and store it over here. Okay, so remember this very importantly, that we provide the subscription ID of that subscription where we want to provision resources. The reason why my backend subscription ID and this particular subscription ID is same, because I am provisioning the backend and my Azure resource under the same subscription. So with this we complete all the three steps of writing a provider.tf file. We have configured Azure RM provider, we have configured Terraform service principal, we have configured backend. In our upcoming videos, we will script our main.tf file. We will put some more variables in the variable.tf file, and we will provision our resource group. If you have any questions, you write down in the comment section. I will try to answer to the best of my knowledge. And please subscribe to my channel if you have not done so. So with this, we will keep it till here. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.